Friends, it's a joy to welcome you to this YouTube program of Walking with God in the Garden. I mentioned that gardening is one of my pastimes. Sometimes it gets more serious than at other times. Right now, I'm picking winter peas, and I must say that they are very popular and people enjoy them. But I also want to assure you that when we share thoughts here, it's more than just about gardening. Although there are many practical lessons that we can learn. I found that after studying the Bible, in terms of what it has to say with respect to subjects, that there are many, many subjects that deal with agriculture. Jesus told parables about the sower, about the crops, about the harvest. So it's not unusual that we would want to share some thoughts about gardening. I'm Richard Hulls. I pastor this program, Walking with God in the Garden, and I want to remind you that if you have any difficulty in getting this program, I want to encourage you to subscribe at Richard Hulls 1449. I can't encourage you enough to tell other people about this program. I don't know how many really respond to it, but I'm told that if I don't get the word out, then there will not be many subscribers. So I'm asking you to help me, just as I would ask you to help me if I was having a church service, which, by the way, I'll be doing tomorrow morning. And this program is being recorded on Saturday, but I conduct a service of worship for a retirement home. And I tell those that are in attendance, they are my missionaries. So they have gone to talk to various members of the community there and inviting them to the church service. I do the same thing with you in subscribing to this YouTube program. Now, when it comes to gardening, I want to share a thought, and it has to do with rebuilding. I was talking to a good friend of mine recently who loves to garden. Unfortunately, she's given up. She told me the other day, I'm not going to plant a garden this year. And I asked her why. And she said, because all I do is feed the gophers and the ground squirrels and the birds. So I am done with gardening. I try to encourage her that there is a way to rebuild, like we need it in life. We've all been introduced to some very, very natural catastrophes. For instance, in Turkey, the earthquake has leveled thousands of homes, destroyed just unbelievable amounts of property. If the community is to survive, they have to rebuild. Like this woman and her gardening. Or maybe we have other issues. Here in America, we oftentimes have flood problems. When the flood rages through a community, the people have to rebuild. We here in Southern California oftentimes suffer fires. And a number of years ago, we had over 2,500 homes burn. In order for the people to survive, they have to rebuild. Rebuilding is a part of life. We know that oftentimes there are things that come up in our lives and we have to kind of start over. I think of marriages that break up and how oftentimes it is starting over, rebuilding. Hopefully we learn some lessons when we rebuild. Or we might have a sickness and it cripples us. We have to rebuild. I think of so many because I am a retired Navy chaplain, oftentimes go to the Naval Hospital, and I see the consequences of war. The Afghanistan war, for instance, created all kinds of circumstances where people have to rebuild. Crippled by explosions, without legs now or arms, injured beyond even what we would call somewhat normal. It's a rebuilding process. Maybe you need to rebuild in your life as well. Are you in despair? Do you feel that your failure somehow contributes to giving up? Or do you face each day with a new sense of direction and wanting to rebuild? I believe that God, through Jesus Christ, enables us to rebuild. It is the greatest challenge that we have ever had. It's a world that oftentimes is in disarray and confusion. But Jesus comes and he says, I've come to give you an abundant life. I have come to give you a new start. I have come to help you overcome guilt and shame and adversity. I have come even to give you life eternal. These are all aspects of rebuilding, and we can take the truth of them and apply them to our lives. I have to, in my own personal life, go through all kinds of steps of rebuilding. I think of my past. I don't want my past to condition me for my future. So I have to build upon a new foundation. The Bible says our foundation is Jesus Christ. I hope that we all will seek that out. But the story that I have for you today is the story of the people of Israel. In 586, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came into the community of Israel, destroyed the entire community, burned the temple to the ground, took captive thousands and thousands of people. It was what we would call a natural and a physical disaster created by war. Were they going to just sit back and let it happen with all its destruction, give up? We know that the modern day story of Israel, 1948, and the recreation of the state, and also the new hope and opportunity that the people of Israel have since the year 70 AD, has been a rebuilding exercise. But we have a story, Old Testament, of the prophet or an ambassador to the Israelites called Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a cupbearer for the king in Babylon. And one day he was in very sad straits. King asked him what was wrong. He said, well, I've got word about the destruction of the city in Jerusalem, and the temple is in disarray. So the king was gracious and let Nehemiah go back. And as he goes back, we have these interesting words. I want to read them for you because they're so appropriate for us today. In Nehemiah, we read in chapter 2 these words, as he spoke to the people who were there. Then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. It kind of tells us that there's another opportunity in life. I hope that we see that we take advantage of that. And then it says, they replied, that is the people, in response to Nehemiah, in this chapter, the second chapter. And I want to read it for you today, verse 11. They replied, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. Friends, we can rebuild our lives. We can rebuild our relationships. We can rebuild a faltering business or a broken home. We can rebuild from physical disarray and troubles in our body, or our mind, or our spirit. I believe that God challenges us to rebuild, not in our strength, but in the strength of Jesus Christ. Rather than giving up, surrendering to the chaos and the distress that oftentimes follows in a divorce, or in a sickness, or even a death in our family, to step forth and to say, let us rebuild. God gives us the courage and the ability to rebuild. And I hope and pray today, here on this YouTube program, that you will not surrender to destruction or loss or anything else that would take your spirit away from you. Jesus, when he came to the world, was crucified. But he told his disciples, I'm not going to stay in the tomb. I'm going to rebuild. And he's offered to all of us today the opportunity and the ability to rebuild our lives. Think it through. Pray about it. Seek help, but never give up or stay where you feel life has somehow given you a bad deal. God offers something so much better. But it's determination. Let us rebuild. So they began the good work. God bless you. I hope that you'll call in again for next week.